SprintCarUnlimited.com's Jeremy Elliott here with Sportsnaut's Matt Weaver. Matt, we've never done one of these, and it's cold.
We have lowered the bar is what we've done for this segment, for this show.
How cold is it out here? We're in a tent and we see our breath.
So listen, we talked about this earlier. I'm from the Gulf Coast, so this is kind of familiar to me. It's a different kind of cold when you're down here. You have the humidity, it gets on your skin, then that gets cold, it's windy. It's a different kind of cold if you're out in PA or you're out in Northern California, you're like, oh, these wimps. It's a different kind of cold, but it's a real cold.
Yeah, it's kind of very wet. You get underneath, well, we're not going to go there. But obviously tonight, Brad Sweet's not a World of Outlaw driver, but guess what? Not much changes. He scores one for high limit against the Outlaws. He looked good tonight.
So listen, I started to send this tweet out. I'm like, man, this is going to get me in trouble. And then I thought, no, I'm going to save it for Jeremy's show. And it's that Brad's went and bought another series, but he still owns the World of Outlaws.
Wow. Well, it gets even better. Tyler Courtney was second. Another high limit driver. David Gravel was third. Interviewed Brad. It took him all of maybe 3 seconds to say something about high limit.
Yeah, same here. I mean, listen, the cool thing to me in talking to all these guys is they want there to be a healthy rivalry, right? I mean, we want it to be like the Outlaws and the Posse. We've got the Outlaws and High Limit. And having these kind of marquee weeks and these marquee shows where you have everyone together, I know the WRG guys aren't going to embrace that as much, but if you're a sprint car fan right now, you've got 45 cars here, the biggest field since 2008 I saw.
Yep.
It's an opportunity to have more stars, more cars, more storylines, more things to talk about. That's a win for the entire industry, in my opinion.
I agree. I think that's maybe what sprint car racing has been missing, a rivalry. We don't get it a lot between drivers because they're so focused on points. They tiptoe around stuff, and I think this is great for the sport.
No, for sure. I mean, to me, the more teams that you have that are like national touring caliber teams and drivers and cars, it makes it easier. Like for me, I spend a lot of time in NASCAR circles, IndyCar circles. I'll say this year there has been way more interest and way more numbers in my sprint car stories. It feels more mainstream. And again, I know anytime that you have a competition and a rivalry, one side's going to feel like that's not a healthy, good thing, but there are way more people who care about this kind of racing right now. Maybe it'll fade, but more in the mainstream than ever in my memory.
No, I agree, and I think David Gravel just took care of business tonight, nice and consistent, which is what you need to win the points. And it didn't help that Carson Macedo, who was one of my biggest disappointments tonight, had to take a provisional. Now he came up to 14th, but still, David Gravel, round one.
Yeah, I mean, listen, so Buddy had a mechanical thing, whatever happened to Sheldon. This is the kind of night that's going to get David what he's always wanted, which is that championship situation. It's a long way to go, obviously. We're talking championship, race one. But, we've talked about it during media day all winter that you need that top 5 finish. And all of a sudden, David's kind of established he's that guy right now, and the other guys are already playing catch up.
Well, not only that, David times well. So he's not going to be out of it most nights. And when you can come down to Volusia, put a solid night together, and here's something to think about. You mentioned Sheldon, you mentioned Buddy. Buddy blew another motor. That's his second one in 2 nights, blew one in practice. Sheldon blew a motor. Macri, who's not an outlaw, he had motor trouble. Motors seems to be the story down here yet again. It usually is. They're popping, and now with the cold weather, that doesn't help.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that. Obviously, this is your bread and butter, and I get to the marquee shows every year. I always start my sprint car season here at DIRTCar Nationals, and it seems like every year we're talking about engines. Is that because of the humidity and the cold as a guy who's an outsider?
Sea level, You're down in sea level. It's a different type of cold. And it seems like every year. Last year, Donnie Schatz took it on the chin here with motors, and now it looks like it's Buddy Kofoid. And I know he has a Chevy and one more Toyota in the trailer, and there's 3 nights to go.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll say this. I think that we have no shortage of storylines. And again, as storytellers, that's who we both are, right? I think there's just lots of things for us to come away and talk about. And the cool thing, too, again, is when this weekend is over, we still have more to go. And that hasn't been the case the last couple of years either.
One last thing before we get out of here. Landon Crawley, 16 years old, goes out and sets quick time in Flight A. He dropped back in the feature, but still, solid run. Again, putting it in the trailer and looks good. And Bill Baylog, I'll have a story tomorrow on SprintCarUnlimited.com. Finished 8th, a solid top 10 run for 2 rookies.
Yeah, I mean, listen, from a Landon Crawley standpoint, I'm a guy that doesn't know much about him at all. But you go out and set fast time against this field. That's a statement for him as a young driver, 16 years old. That's wild, right? Well, what was I doing at 16? What were you doing at 16?
We can't say what I was doing at 16.
That's right. To have a chance to go win a heat, I know, the last corner kind of bit him there. Jason Sides Racing, what a statement for them and their stuff, and the opportunity to grow a team and a driver, depending on how long that relationship lasts. Great story too.
Yeah, it's better to just ease into this season for Landon, and then he can maybe start making more noise and racing harder. Later in the year, maybe a month from now. But critical to get out of here without blowing a bunch of stuff up.
Yeah, I mean, on a night where a lot of guys didn't finish. I mean, listen, he had a great qualifying effort, raced well in his heat. The feature wasn't what they wanted it to be, but I think that it goes into the notebook, and this was a good night if you're Landon and you're Jason and those guys.
That's going to wrap things up from Volusia. Thank you, Matt. You did well. It's like you're a professional.
I try. I don't know about professional, but you make me look real good.
For Sportsnaut's Matt Weaver, SprintCarUnlimited.com's Jeremy Elliott. We'll be back tomorrow. Stay tuned.